The goal of the show is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. And we do that every single week by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. We also post advertising news you need to know in 60 seconds or less on our LinkedIn. You got to follow us there at Breaking Entering Media. Turn on post notifications. I won't talk anymore. You just got to check it out. It's unlike anything you've ever seen before. And welcome back to our adjunct edition of the Breaking Entering show. Adjunct is where we interview professors, lecturers, academics to talk about advertising today and their best advice for the next generation. They're in the epicenter. They're researching, studying this stuff. And today we're joined by Dean Hub Brown. We're headed to Gainesville, Florida, to speak with him. Dean of the College of Journalism and Communications at the University of Florida, Dean Brown brings a rare blend of industry experience and academic leadership to the table. From producing award-winning documentaries and working in broadcast journalism, he's now leading one of the most respected communication programs in the country. I visited Gainesville, University of Florida School of Journalism. I visited there in November, and it was fantastic. They have so many experiences for their students, hands-on learning. Paired that with sound academics, it is a win-win. So, talking with Dean Hub Brown was incredible. If you've ever considered a future in academia, maybe you want to go to grad school or just want a better understanding of what it takes to thrive in today's media landscape, this episode is for you. He's got a great journalism background. I learned a little bit about that. It's important for advertising professionals to know this stuff too. You're going to love it. Check him out. Connect with him. Check out the school. I'll put all the links in the show notes. And if I forget, just Google University of Florida School of Communications. Sound good? Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, Adjunct Edition. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Dean Hub Brown, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm excited to talk with you. You are the dean and you're a professor at the College of Journalism and Communications at the University of Florida. Is this correct? Did I get this title right?
Absolutely.
So we are going to unpack that, what it's like to be a student, maybe to study advertising at the University of Florida, and then your take on the industry and any advice you have for the next generation. How does that sound, sir?
Sounds like a good conversation. Let's get it.
Wonderful. And for context, I visited in November of this year, and it was absolutely fantastic to be there, to understand what it's like to be a student there in Gainesville, large campus, and so many opportunities for all College of Journalism students at the University of Florida and communications. There's no excuse to not get involved, it seems like. You have these robust programs, platforms for them. I believe there's an ESPN suite that you can get on air experience, and I was mesmerized by that. So thanks for having me a couple months back for that.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. It was great to have you. And we do have, we'll talk about it. We do have a lot of things going on in those places that we call immersion venues. And we can talk about our approach to getting students really ready for our professions out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then tell me about yourself and your role today at the university. What does it entail? What do you oversee? How does it all work?
Well, the depending on who you ask, I think the job of dean is either the best job on a university campus or the worst. Maybe it depends on the day, but it really is a job that involves you representing the college more and more through a lot of different venues. Obviously, to our alumni and our donor community, to the professions out there. To the university itself. Running this college really does involve listening to a lot of stakeholders, obviously talking with the faculty about where they want to send things, and also the staff. We have a very large staff here. We run in the College of Journalism and Communications. We have a full service advertising agency. We have a experimental social media analytics studio. We have 2 television stations and 5 radio stations, and a lot of opportunity for students to do really hands-on work. But at the same time, we have to maintain that with a robust research enterprise. The University of Florida is an R1, a Carnegie R1 school, and so it's the research expectations here are very high, and we are one of those programs that you take a look at when you actually compare journalism and mass communications programs out there. We're one of the ones that does it all. You see a lot of programs out there that are very professionally focused, and a lot of programs out there that are very research centered. We are both of those things at the same time, and we pursue them with equal vigor, really. That's our identity, and I think that's what the people of the state of Florida expect of us, what the communities expect of us, and we're doing, really everything we can to make sure we get our students ready to get out there and make a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's that balance between like research and practical hands-on experience. You got to have both. You don't want to skew one way or the other. It seems like you guys do a great job of balancing that. So, can you tell me about the different majors within the college?
Oh, sure, certainly. At the undergrad level, we have 4,
Okay.
and we have obviously our advertising major, and by number of students at the moment, that's the largest major in the college.
There we go. I like that. Breaking, entering, advertising. We like that.
There you go. There you go. Also, a very good sized public relations department alongside journalism and our media production management and technology department, which does a lot of the non-journalistic visual storytelling,
Hmm.
really everything from, well, podcasts to feature films.
I
So
like that.
we've got pretty much the gamut there in terms of a lot of things with regards to communication.
And that's the undergrad. And then what do you guys offer for post grad, the master's programs, PhDs, if you will?
So we do have a PhD, a 4-year PhD program, fairly good size. We've got about right around 40 students right now
Okay.
in the PhD program at various stages, and look like we might get a pretty decent class coming in this year. So we're very excited about that. We do have a master's. We have a couple of different master's programs. We have an on-ground master's in mass communication, and then we have our online masters. They have specializations ranging from strategic communication to public interest communication to political and sports. There's a number of different things you can do, specializing within the Masters of Arts in mass communication.
Nice. Where did you get your PhD from?
Well, first of all, curiously, I don't have a PhD.
Okay.
I have a master's degree and a large amount of experience
Yeah.
in journalism, in broadcast journalism, and I got my degrees closer to where I grew up at the University of Nebraska,
Mm.
and I went into the field there as a reporter, producer, and then moved on to work for a statewide public television network there, doing documentaries, doing really the long form, before coming back to teaching.
Got it.
First at Nebraska, then Syracuse University, the Newhouse School, and now here.
Okay. A lot to unpack there. So
Yeah.
what did you study undergrad at University of Nebraska? Is that correct?
Yeah. It's interesting because one of the things that we talk about here in journalism here, the provost says, well, journalism, mass communications is kind of a found major at UF. In other words, a lot of students come here with different majors. They discover CJC and get all excited, and then they want to be a mass communications major. And so that happens a lot. And that kind of happened to me. When I was an undergrad, a long time ago, I was a political science major, and I was thinking very much that, I'll go to law school and be an attorney. But from high school, I was always interested in what was going on at the radio station, and so in high school, I worked at the radio station that was literally in the basement of the high school, and was an NPR affiliate and served the city of Omaha. And then the first thing I did when I got to college was look for the radio station, and found my people there. You know, when you send students to the university from your families, you hope that they find their people. And I found mine in the radio station, and so began pretty much spending a whole lot of time there, and deciding later on, discovering, well, geez, this is fun. Maybe I should just do this as a major. And that's how I wound up going into broadcast and broadcast journalism.
So what were you doing at the radio station? What really drew to you? Were you like playing music? Were you talking? How did like production on the back end? I've never worked in a radio facility like that.
Oh, that's interesting. So it was in the high school version, they had us doing very limited things, but you know, running the board, so you know, getting programs on the air, that sort of thing. There was this brand new program when I was in high school called All Things Considered on NPR, and we were putting that on the air, um, and um, and doing some limited work. So the first program that I ever did, that I produced, was a classical music program, and I was 17. And so that began sort of the career of doing things in broadcast, and
Wow.
went from there to working on a campus radio station when I got to college, and then beginning through the journalism classes to actually begin to write news and cover news and those sorts of things.
Wow. So that was a foundational experience at 17 when you were in the high school and you had that hands-on experience. That's so nice that that kind of set the tone for you. Uh,
Mhm.
I always say it really helps when you can identify early on what you want to do. The earlier, the better. And it's hard for
Mhm.
people. For
It
me,
is.
it was the TV show Mad Men.
Ah, there you go.
And
Yes.
that, it stuck with me that Roger Sterling, the account guy, was like, this is something that I would like to do. And then studied it in college, and I had my North Star. Be an account executive at a large ad agency is the goal in Chicago, New York, LA, wherever it might be. And that really was helpful because I had that North Star. It seemed like you found that pretty early. So you then got involved in the radio on campus at University of Nebraska. And then what was your first job then? How did you break into your career?
Well, my first job, by the time I got to Nebraska, I was maybe a year and a half in by the time I actually was working at a TV station. It was the CBS affiliate there in the city of Lincoln.
Mhm.
Um, and so you're talking sort of mid to smaller market television. It was a television station, and obviously it's still there. The coverage area was huge, so it covered the capital city, which which is a city of a couple 100,000 people, but it also reached out into pretty much a whole lot of rural Nebraska. And so getting to understand people, getting to understand their stories and becoming a storyteller is so much richer when you can get to so many different populations of people who are not like you, and you begin to learn their stories. And so that was really, I think, the really that was the beginning of my journalism career, and it was really the beginning of learning storytelling, learning what was important about getting people's stories, getting on the air, get understanding people's problems, their challenges, their hopes, all of those things. And it was a huge education. It really was. I was up the road in one of the larger cities in Omaha, doing things in an inner city at the same time that I'd be all the way out someplace on a ranch in north central part of the state where pretty much everybody's doing work on the back of a horse. and
Yeah.
that's real eye opening, and that's a place where you get a lot of education about people, about their struggles, about what's going on.
Tell me, like, is there a story that really sticks out from your journalism career? Maybe it was your first one or just something totally different that still resonates with you today?
Oh goodness. Oh, I do have many. I think probably one of the biggest ones was a story I did about a branding in in north central Nebraska, and so
Now,
it's
when you say
it's
branding, I come from the advertising world. Is like a rebrand, like a company branding a new logo of some sort, or is what are you referring to here?
I'm referring to the application of hot irons onto the rumps of cattle.
Okay. Yes, I've heard of that branding. Yes, I've never seen that.
Yes. And yeah, no, it's a thing to behold. They were doing it pretty much the same way that they've been doing it since the turn of the 20th century. Um, it's a very quick process because basically they're just sort of kind of touching the skin of the animal, but also inoculating all of the cattle for diseases like brucellosis and things like that. Um, but what it does is it brings people, the families around, all around the community. They come together to help one family get all of their calves processed and that sort of thing, and then they go on to the next family and the next and the next. And so it was telling really a story about how that was, how they continued to do that for decades,
Wow.
and also at the time certainly what the real pressures were. I mean, it was really a time when I mean, like today, when agriculture was under quite a lot of stress. Prices weren't high enough. Um, Finances were really rough. Interest rates were higher than they needed to be, and it was hard for ag producers to get capital. And so you tell the story of the people who are there and what they're doing, but also you use that to tell the larger story about what is happening in that industry,
Hmm.
and how they see themselves moving through it.
Got it. Understood. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. But but now I'm curious then, how does this kind of like what's the vision at this point and how do you stumble into higher education academia? Like where does this pivot point come?
That's a very interesting thing. The the pivot point really came as I was continuing to work at the public broadcaster for Lincoln. Actually, it's the center of a 9-station network that goes from one end of the state to the other, which is really um, great, again, because it takes in the entire broad sweep. Nebraska is 500 miles long. There are 2 time zones. And it is, goes from the very tiniest communities to larger metropolitan areas. Um, and so we worked very much on a lot of big issue documentaries, things about the environment, things about the economy, et cetera, et cetera. Um, the My home department at the university uh, started to ask if I would maybe teach as an adjunct,
Hmm.
and I literally had not thought too terribly much about teaching. Um, I was very happy doing what I was doing, and I did say yes to one sort of adjunct job. And when you're a storyteller and you get into a classroom, um, and you begin to sort of learn the stories of the students, where they want to go and the kinds of things they want to do when they want to tell stories, I think that begins to be somewhat addictive. And so you get interested in their development, and you want to make sure that they are equipped to do the things that they are going to be asked to do in the profession. And I had pretty strong opinions about where I thought the profession should go.
Hmm.
Um, the person who held me to account for those kinds of things more than anything was the dean at the time, the late Neil Koppel. He was a great guy, one of the best leaders in academia that I'd ever known.
Mm.
And one day he hauled me into his office and said, "You really need to be doing this full time." And I said, "Why do you think that?" And I said, "Well, why don't you listen to yourself?" Basically. Um, so so um, so he we talked and talked, and eventually, yes, I decided to go into it, but not before we did have some, I think, fairly candid conversations about journalism education, what it needs, those sorts of things. Because I thought at the time, and still do, that the best education really needs to be very focused on making students ready with and the cycle from being out of the profession and into teaching needs to be tighter and tighter, so that students understand much more about what's happening right now.
Hmm.
So and so here and in a lot of other places, if you've got faculty who've been here in the institution for a while, it's a good thing to maybe send them back into the newsroom, send them back into the advertising suite.
Hmm.
Take a summer and work with the professionals. Let's talk about what the current issues are in the profession, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what my approach was going to be and going to need to be. And so I
Interesting.
started very, very early doing that.
I like that. I like that. I can see that. That's something I would like to do, is get in the classroom and, with the learnings of the show and all of the conversations, apply that back in. So you
Mhm.
kind of stay fresh. And like what you're saying, that lecturers, professors should have, like, stay up to date with the industry and the current professional environment. I love that. You have that mentality. That's so important. Um, so then you get your master's, you then start teaching full time, I'm assuming. You made that transition full time in the classroom at some point, I'm assuming, after that conversation.
So yeah, so I did, and really, um, I there was a period of transition. So I continued to work for public television,
Hmm.
and a big part of my job was a weekly program that we were doing, and most states have this sort of a weekend review of the activities of the legislature, what the politicians are doing. I had covered the legislature for a lot of years, um, and I worked out of the station's studio, which was within the state capitol, and I had an office there. We would put out a show every Friday evening, basically weekend review, doing those sorts of things. But we're getting material all week long,
Hmm.
and putting together packages and doing the roll-in segments and interview segments and things like that. And so we just basically cut the show, put the show together Friday evening, and it goes out just a little bit later there in the evening. Um, and so I would work there, but I would also organize my classes. So I had an office in the journalism school on campus. And so you'd go back and forth to those. And then I had a third office that was at the television station, where I did other work as besides going to the legislature. So I was bouncing there was a good chunk of my life where I was bouncing between three offices,
Oh my
trying to
goodness.
get things done, trying to make sure that we're getting all the grading back to the students,
Yeah.
but at the same time getting the show going. And so it was a lot, but that was part of the transition.
Hmm.
After a couple of years of that, then I sort of devoted full time to teaching.
Got it. So then how would you summarize very briefly that moment from when you go full time to where you're at today? What were some of those high points, big lessons on going from full time lecturer, whatever that title might have been, to being the dean of a university? How do you even go about closing that divide?
Wow. You end up saying yes to a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and you also have to, I think, just examine yourself. What is your why? Why are you in this? And can you be, can you do more? Can you literally, uh, you know, come to work thinking about the next big thing that the organization should be doing?
Hmm.
Um, and think about bigger issues. Um, and I there I think the first time that happened really was before I started to teach, and I was still working at the CBS affiliate, but I became a finalist for a year long fellowship. It was one of those really big funded things, and it was a national thing. I didn't get it. The director, and this was at the University of Chicago,
Hmm.
and the director pulled me aside and actually had me notice the fact that among all of the finalists for this particular fellowship, I was the youngest one there, and it kind of wasn't close, and
Wow.
so as we got into the Q&A afterwards, he basically impressed upon me that doing the day-to-day job of a broadcast journalist that's great and that's fine, and you keep doing that and keep challenging yourself. But in order to make that next big step, you need to be thinking about bigger things. And so he said, if you're going to be in a place where you're going to do this sort of nationally renowned fellowship, you're going to have to do more than just the day to day, get the news on the air, that sort of thing. That led directly to me thinking about that again and again when I started to teach. You know,
Interesting.
what are the bigger concepts? What are the things that you want to do to affect where the profession, where the academic setting is going.
Right. So when did you get to University of Florida?
So I got to the University of Florida in 2021. And that was really fun because, I interviewed during the pandemic, and I came to a campus that had 55,000 students, and not a single one of them was here. And
incredible. Wow.
And so we did our interviews, and I did 2 in-person interviews, and then got a sense of the campus from Zoom calls.
Okay.
And so we got past that part, but 2021, it's gone by so incredibly fast, and I'm really enjoying it. This is a great place to be.
Got it. And what drew you to, in 2021, taking on the call to be the next dean at this college? What were they asking? What did you see? What was the potential? Where were you at?
So I was associate dean for research and creative activity at the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Yep.
And I was asked to apply here, but I also had been asked to apply for dean's jobs in the years leading up to this, fairly repeatedly, and I basically turned them all down. I did go on a couple of them, and concluded at the end that if I had been offered, I probably would decline.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be, the Newhouse is a great place to be. Mm-hmm. And the job had to be a really good one, a really big one, if I was going to go and leave Central New York for it. This was that and then some. This was the big job and then some. I had always known Florida and the College of Journalism and Communications by reputation. Seeing a lot of faculty colleagues at various conferences. If you're in research in mass communications, or if you're in very much hands-on teaching in mass communications in this country, you're kind of 6 degrees of Florida. You know somebody who is a PhD at Florida, who is a practitioner at Florida. You might have worked with them on a particular project. You might have served with them on a council or a major sort of academic enterprise. It's 6 degrees of Florida. So I knew the place. But knowing the place and then knowing what the potential of leading a college such as this are 2 different things. I got to learn that. And when I did, the decision was really easy to get here. It is a fascinating place, and I'm in a fascinating job. Just making sure we advance what we're doing on behalf of the students and behalf of the folks who send those students here.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you have to think bigger. So what are you thinking is next for the college at the University of Florida?
Oh, well, you know what? The University of Florida is about to hopefully say hello soon to a new president of the university.
Okay.
And once that takes place, we'll probably have conversations about what the next steps are. It's been a few years since we had a major fundraising campaign at this university. There may be another one in the future. Mm-hmm. If that is the case, there are a number of different things at this college that I think are important to maybe pay attention to, and maybe we should do something about. One of them is we have a great physical plant here. It's a big old building, but it's about 40, almost 50 years old, and there are some things that are in need of updating here because students learn differently now than they did in the early 1980s and late 1970s.
True.
it's learning is much more collaborative. It's much more team focused. We what I'd like to do in the next step of this is to create more spaces for students to be creative,
Yeah.
more collision spaces, more creative opportunities that the building can facilitate. A lot of students do a lot of creative things here in spite of the environment, not because of it. And so we can do more to really enhance that. We can also enhance research by doing that as well. We have a research lab, and there's a whole lot of different things that we are able to do there. Um, but we are always attracting faculty who are doing the latest things here
Right.
in terms of research, and we want to make sure we accommodate those things. Um, you you have to continue to do those sort of things if what your goal is to be the preeminent program in mass communications, uh, both on the research side and on the practitioner side, on the teaching side. And that's where we aim to be. We aim to be always to be in the short list of the top programs.
I love it. I love it. And, to the listeners, aspiring advertising professionals, maybe some journalists out there as well, but mainly to the aspiring advertising professionals, like what advice do you have for them? As they're graduating or they're just getting into academia, you can take this however you want, but what would you like to say to them?
Well, a lot of them who are here don't really need to be told this, but don't wait. Don't wait to be asked. Get off the sidelines. Just jump in with both feet into that profession.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are there are so many different things that you can learn by really just immersing yourself, and and oftentimes I find that students who are coming through, especially in the early years, but even towards the end, even towards graduation, they're almost too careful by half, very cautious, and that's okay. It's good to be cautious in a lot of different things, but don't pass up a big opportunity because you're thinking about everything that can go wrong. You want to take the opportunities that are out there. Um, you've heard all the cliches, the Wayne Gretzky, you
Yeah.
miss 100% of the shots you don't take, so those sorts of things. But it is in fact true. Um, the worst thing is to have passed by an opportunity and then come later to regret doing that.
Yeah.
So see those for what they are. Don't be afraid. There are many, many things that are going on out here that are concerning. But we have to march into the future with a degree of fearlessness, of understanding that yes, it's a little scary out there. It's okay to be. That's okay, but we move forward anyway. Um, and so that's what I think we're going to have to continue to sort of reinforce with students going forward. And they've had enough of that in their lives, enough disruption in their lives to to know the value, I think, of just moving forward fearlessly, of just saying, you know what, let's just go, let's go.
Mhm.
I mean, we've all gone through the pandemic, but I did it at an advanced stage and they did it in their teens.
Mhm.
There's a big difference there. When I was in my teens, I could not have imagined the kinds of things, going through the kinds of things that these students are having to go through now. And so, yes, sometimes I think that makes people a little bit more cautious. But now it's not the time for that.
No,
Now it's the time to go forward and be bold.
I agree. I agree. My biggest regret was not starting my show earlier.
Hmm.
It took the pandemic to really be the catalyst, but to create something to go after and pursue earlier is what I would tell my younger self.
Indeed.
And for the listeners now who are not enrolled at University of Florida, uh, I guess how could they get involved, or if they want to take higher education classes? What should they do? Should they consider the master's program? Should they check out the site? What would be the next step for them to learn more about you and the program specifically?
Well, if they're out there and they're certainly if they're professionals and they're looking to sort of upskill and do those sorts of things, our online master's program is a great place to start. And looking, our it's very well renowned. It goes through sort of the quality, you know, what's that? The QA process is the
Accreditation.
quality assurance process. Yes,
Okay.
and so what it does is it does assure that quality of the master's program. It's really good, and so yes, I think that that's one place to take a look and get a sense of the different kinds of things you can do there. Those are all on our website um, and can be found just going through the website.
Golden.
But it's and you can always just come here. Uh, it's great in Florida this time of year.
Yeah.
It's going to be almost 90 degrees today and sunny, and I know that that's probably not the case in Michigan right now. So
That's true. That's
you
true.
know, come on down. We'd be happy to host you
Amazing.
because it's you'll love it.
Like I said, I visited earlier and it was a great time. I'm so impressed by the immersion experiences that you all offer. I obviously didn't take classes and didn't, with no professors or anything like that. But speaking to some of the students there, the passion that they have, the motivation for this industry and advertising specifically, I've seen people, alumni in the industry. I've talked to them. I've interviewed some of them as well.
Mhm.
And it's just really impressive. So having you on to kind of give us that understanding of the university, your background, your experience, how you can break into academia without the PhD, with all that experience is so inspiring for my own personal journey and for everybody else listening too. So I just
Thank-
want to thank you again.
Well, thank you very much, and have them come by and see our agency.
Yeah,
A full service advertising agency, and the students are coming up with creative content that's just amazing, and doing real world stuff. So it's fun to see, and it's an inspiring space.
it is nice. It is nice. Well, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming on again. I hope you have a great rest of your day and wish you all the best in the future of the college and the university as well.
Hey, look, Gino, all the best to you. Keep it going. This is a great program.
Thank you,
You
sir.
take care.
Thank you.